put in the background to the intro?
I wish I could. Technically, we are live now, but I would give it just a minute before we actually do the intro, since a lot of times there's like a delay. Like as you can see here, it's a major delay. And there's actually an advertisement this time.
Major delay.
Major delay.
I knew him.
So, but here we go. So most people probably have skipped already, and you can now jump into it. So.
All right. So today is live stream number 22. And of course, as we all know, in numerology, the number 22 is considered a master number, signifying powerful potential for manifestation and creating significant change on a large scale, often associated with spiritual awakening, building lasting legacies, and achieving grand visions. Magical connections to 22 include the power of manifestation, building a strong foundation, unity, consciousness, the concept of the divine blueprint, and the ability to create lasting impact through significant projects or endeavors. So, I mean, no pressure, dude. But
is that what your zodiac thing told you?
No, actually, my wife, a little tiny forest creature, she is the one it's her fault that I know about this.
Oh, gosh. Good morning, Craig. Good morning, Linus. Good morning, everybody in the Shakuhachi world, and welcome to another live stream, number 22, and it is Shakuhachi giveaway day.
That's right.
Yay. And this time we're actually going to tell you, pretty much right away who the winner is.
Yes.
So we're just going to wait for it to populate, kind of wait until just about that 11 o'clock mark here, so it's about 4 minutes. But we have a bunch of topics to talk about today.
We do.
In addition to giving away these flutes. So do you want to give them at least what our first topic is?
Well, we are going to talk a little bit about the is it the flute or is it me problem. And how you can talk to your teacher if you have a teacher, but if you don't, there are a lot of ways that you can find out, including you can go to our Discord and you can ask anybody on the forum, say, hey, listen to this. Is it me or is it the flute? And most of us who are more advanced players can help you with that. But I'm sure Taidu's going to have some things to add on that. And we also want to talk a little bit today about you mentioned last week, you said it's not a particularly good flute day.
Oh, yes.
And we also want to talk a little bit about how if you've got a performance coming up, how do you have a good flute day? How do you plan for a good flute day?
Well, we can answer the first one really quickly. So let's do that one before we give away the flute. And
right.
How do I know if it's the flute or me?
Right. There's a lot of posts on the Discord. I bought this flute from this guy named Bob out of a van at the fair. And is it me or is it the flute? Is it in tune?
Look, it's not that you bought it out of a van. It's not that you bought it from a guy named Bob. It's because you bought it at a fair, okay? If it was anywhere else, it might actually be a pretty darn good flute. So... and we just got a confirmation from Craig that the audio is actually much better today. So I don't know what it is sometimes with the wires and stuff, but I'm glad that
it's a day of powerful manifestation.
It's 22. Okay, I understand. All right. Well, I guess the numerology gods are with us today. So is it the flute or me? So one of the things that's so hard to answer this question, and I get this email a lot. I mean, I could probably go to my email and just type in, is it me? And then I'll get a population of 40 emails that are asking this exact question.
Right.
And the answer is sometimes it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that's so tough because it's sometimes people do go on Amazon and they get a good flute. Sometimes it happens, and then when you're trying to explain to that person, it's like, well, that's not the norm. You're trying to convince someone that that's kind of won the lottery in a sense. Like the lottery is not a good investment, but I won. It's like it was good for you.
Yes,
but
the lottery is a tax on people who don't understand statistics.
Yes, yeah. But at any rate, a lot of times, the flutes are good enough to a certain point, right? Like they can get you started. They can do a lot of the things that you need them to do to learn some of the most basic stuff. But then as things start to progress and you have to do things like sumeri, you got to get a bigger row sound, you're looking for more dynamics, then there starts to be issues with the flutes. But we come into another issue or another impasse, which is, well, what type of flute is it? Yeah. If it's a jinashi, if it's a myoan flute, if it's an oshu flute, is it a modern tozan, is it a modern kinko, is it a classical kinko? And these instruments have lots of different variations or little sensibilities to them that make it really difficult. So there is a chance that if you bought the flute, it was really, really cheap. Let's say it was under $100, under $200. There's a good chance that it could be the flute. Right? I won't lie about that. But if you're buying from a reputable maker and you have a teacher who's assisting you along the way, it's most likely you, right? It just most likely is. That's just the case. But there are the times when people have bought them off of Amazon. They're trying to do it all by themselves, and they're running into these issues of being able to make a good clear sound or playing in tune. And unfortunately, it is the flute at that point, and unfortunately, you've wasted your money on that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of instruments out there that are being sold as shakuhachi.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just because it's a linear flute with 5 holes, it doesn't mean it's a shakuhachi.
That's right. Yeah.
And I've actually, I've had the experience of having a student who, I know for a fact the flute is fine. And it's kind of difficult sometimes to say, no, that's not the flute, it's you.
Yes.
And that can hurt. I mean, people get their feelings hurt, or they are just, can't believe it. Especially if they're already a musician in another way. Then they're like, what do you mean? It's not me. I'm like, it is. But I also have a student who, it's definitely the flute.
Yes, you do. Yeah, I know the flute. And also you could have the right flute, and it could be a good flute, but it's wrong for the style you're learning.
Yes.
Right. That's why I was saying if you're playing on an 8/0 era flute and you're trying to play modern music, it's not going to happen.
Well, that Tawadi tuning. One of my students has a flute that is Tawadi tuning, and it's in the hands of somebody who's a little more advanced player. You could
maneuver around,
mangle it into the pitch you want. But as a beginner, that's really tough.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're ready to give away some flutes.
All right.
Cool.
So speaking of flutes, it is definitely you.
It is time to give these things away. Okay. And actually, because we've already had ChatGPT pull up our 2 winners, I actually know who both of them are, so I can hunt these people down.
Oh, cool.
And get them. So
I was here when the ChatGPT thing was pulled, and so there's no funny business going on. I watched it happen on the screen.
Yeah. So, so our first winner, and who's actually in the chat, so he has to get all excited and write a bunch of comments and stuff, and share the video, like the video. And if you haven't done that, you need to do that as well. So our first winner is our longest subscribed member, who happened to be picked by ChatGPT, who is David Fitzgibbons. So congratulations, David. You just won yourself a new Yozan flute.
David Fitzgibbons.
Yeah, I feel like the Oprah of Shakuhachi right now. You get a flute, and you get a flute.
Look under your chair.
Look under your chair, everybody. Look under your chair. You will find the sense of row. Yes, that's right, David. You won. You won a flute. So, better than a fridge is what he said. All right, we will call the next winner in about 5 minutes. So that's the first one there.
It is. I mean, like I said, it was no funny business. It was definitely random, but it is kind of satisfying to see it be somebody that has been around for so long.
Yeah. I think it's now 38 months that you've been on the membership. So.
Wow.
You could have bought a flute at that point.
That's right. That's right. Well, so speaking of the membership, we should talk a little bit about the new level of the membership, the advanced music videos.
That's a good point. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, we do have a new membership level, and so in the future it will be a 20 ticket sort of deal. So you'll get 20 tickets when you sign up for this level, and when we're doing a flute giveaway. We're doing an advanced music course, and so the first 2 pieces that I've uploaded on teaching is the famous Haru no Umi, the Sea in Spring, which is in a very advanced piece, and I teach everything on the 1.8, even though a lot of the pieces will be on different flute sizes.
Haru no Umi is usually 1.6, right?
Yeah, usually 1.6.
Is that because of the koto?
No, it can be played on a 1.8. Okay. It's not like it has to be there. But the original piece was for violin and koto, and so it was following that tuning, which is on E. E minor is a lot is very easy to play on violin.
If you're not familiar with the piece, there's an absolutely beautiful Kakizakai.
Yeah, Kakizakai's version is absolutely fantastic.
Version of it. So.
And so then also I have Yamamoto Hozan's Geese is also going to be up there as well. And if I have time today, I'll be teaching my very own Burning Roots sketch for solo shakuhachi as well. So that will be up there.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, when you go onto a Tairu video and you hear that amazing
like the that little opening is
from Burning
Roots.
Burning
Roots sketch. So if you're interested in learning that piece, that's what will be up there.
He hasn't even taught me that piece. So
I think the only person I taught that piece was Alejandro.
That's right.
And he played it on Western flute.
Yeah, he told me privately that was quite an uphill fight.
Yes. Yeah.
For the Western flute. But yeah.
So thank you for reminding me to do that advanced music. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff and you want to learn some of the really difficult contemporary music pieces and maybe even some honkyoku pieces, I am taking requests for that series. So if there's a specific piece that you've been wanting to learn forever and there's nowhere to teach it, no one's teaching it, send it to me, and if I know it, I will upload a video on that series specifically on how to play it.
And I am just loading up the Haro no Umi, the Kakizakai version in the chat.
Yeah, awesome.
For those who are curious, it's beautiful.
And by the way, Kakizakai was my first teacher, so
it's a kind of piece that, yes, it is part of something that's played with koto, but you can play it by itself.
Yeah,
to great effect. And
I
in fact,
agree.
I think when you hear it by itself, it's usually a little slower and not quite as rhythmic. But
yeah, it can be a little bit more like in a sort of a honkyoku fu-ni.
And it's quite pretty. It's quite pretty on its own.
Another thing that I want to talk about just before we give away our second flute is I want to talk about the winter time and the flute cracks. So I did get an email about somebody who who unfortunately had just got a Yozan flute. And it's in the middle of winter, it's the driest part, and it cracked, split down the middle. And
it's rough.
I'm telling you, man, my heart goes out for those people. That's like the worst thing in the world. And I just had another student who, a past student of mine, who his longer flute, he said he woke up and is split down the middle there. And
that is terrible.
And it's that winter time, and you have to be very, very careful with your flutes at this time. And you want to make sure that you have a humidifier in the room. Or if you have like putting hot air into the bag, like it's so easy to take care of these things, but it's so easy to get it so that they break. Once you're done playing, you put the cap on, you put the flute into this plastic bag, take it, blow hot air, fill it all the way up, and then seal it up, and you won't have any problems. Now,
some people put rubber bands, like fold it over and put a rubber band over it.
And that's what I do here. Like I'll do this here, and then I use this himo or this like line to seal it shut. Another thing too that you can do to really help prevent the cracking of your flutes is boiled linseed oil. I know we've mentioned that many times. It's an old a lumberjack's trick.
Yeah, woodworking thing.
Yeah, linseed oil is your friend on this one. So.
It's great stuff, and make sure it's boiled. Don't buy just linseed oil.
Yeah, if it will take 10 to 30 times longer to dry if it's not boiled.
It takes about a month to dry if you put regular linseed oil on it.
All right. So now we have to give away our second flute. So, and we're going to have more flute giveaway. We will have more flute giveaways in the future. So please sign up for the membership. It is worth it. There are so many things on there that you can get from Bitmask, for example, who just walked in. He's on the advanced membership, but he's going to learn how to play Hara no Umi and play it better than me one day. We're going to give away the second flute now. So second flute is going to Mr. Brian Purdy. Mr.
Yay.
Brian Purdy. So congratulations, Brian. He's living out in the southern parts of the U.S. of A. And I think he's gonna absolutely enjoy this flute. And I actually probably think he'll just give it away himself to somebody else. He's a pretty nice guy.
Awesome.
So,
all right. So we're believing that we're past the nobody claiming the free flute hump.
Oh no, these guys are absolutely claiming them.
We're definitely over it.
Yeah, and now I can actually go buy a few more and give those away in the upcoming months. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And so,
cool.
What do we got?
Do we have? I didn't check really quick to see if we had any questions from people coming through the My shakuhachi is in dire condition, so it's great. Are you not blowing in the bag, Dave? You're supposed to.
Well, when he came back for a lesson recently and started signing back up, and when he took his flute out, it just had bindings from the top to the bottom. I was like, whoa. So
trying to hold it together. Mm-hmm. All right. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about a little bit today, I mentioned earlier, was the good flute day. So last week you were improvising, and I thought it sounded pretty cool, but you were saying, "Oh, it's not a particularly good flute day for me." So I know we've all had that experience. Mm-hmm. I've definitely had that experience. But what is it that you can do to avoid the bad flute day? Say you have a performance coming up, and you don't want to get up in front of the audience and say, "Sorry, bad flute day." So what do you do to avoid it?
Well, a lot of it comes to like what you do for your pregame, and so most importantly for me is the day before I don't drink, I don't drink any sort of alcohol. Right?
I'm sorry.
Alcohol.
What? How you don't drink? But how do you sleep? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's what is it? Percocet. It's usually does the trick. I don't take anything. I don't do aspirin. It's just a really good night's sleep. And the other thing is a lot of water, extra hydration the night before too. And
then like to go on stage needing to pee. That's how I.
Well, it's the night before you go, because then you wake up and it will.
No. I feel like it puts urgency to the performance.
Oh, yes. I could never play at tempo, but when I have to pee, magically those runs.
It's incredible. Yeah,
they're lightning fast. So now I know the tricks of Heifetz.
That's right. That's
it's just always had to pee.
Always had to pee.
So yeah, I don't drink the night before, and usually if the concert's not super late at night. If it's somewhere like early afternoon or early evening performance, I won't eat all day. It just really helps to stay focused, and I always feel a lot more just vivid, and everything feels a lot more awake when I'm on an empty stomach. So
okay, so this is sort of a tradition that I encountered not in the shakuhachi world, but like in playing gigs with bands and stuff. There are of course people in the like rock and roll music world that have never gone on stage sober, right?
Yeah.
And I can't do that. So as a singer especially, I have to like remember the words, right?
Yeah.
So, but how do you feel about the one shot of whiskey before the show?
Well,
to help relax or whatever.
So look, so we have like really famous examples of this. For example, in the rock world, Slash from Guns N' Roses was completely hammered at every single concert.
Yeah. And there are plenty of videos out there of Slash not being able to play his own parts.
Yes, and just
because he's a little too many.
Too many, right? And then in the Western classical world, Heinrich Schering, who actually had I think it was a brain aneurysm from alcohol, and but he was completely smashed on every single stage every time he played because he just had such bad stage fright. But I was meeting with another pianist. I won't mention who his name is because he's still very active, but he says, look, if I have a really high pressure event and I know I have to play really well, I will take a shot of bourbon right before I go on stage, like just right before.
Wow.
And he says it just makes me play unbelievably well.
See, as a singer, I've always had people say, "Oh, I have a little bourbon or a little rye beforehand, helps your throat." It doesn't do that for me. It just makes me, because I don't love the burning sensation of those drinks. But when playing with kind of a bar band, just out of self-defense, I used to take a shot of tequila before going, and like, okay, no, I'm done. And then the rest of the band, could get hammered before we went on.
So Brian says here, who is also our flute winner, when I play harmonica on stage, I usually have whiskey on the rocks, usually because the band leader sets them up. I think it's a blue thing.
Yeah, I could be. And harmonica, too, there's something to be said for having, like, relaxed your throat and everything so you can bend pitches a little better. So, could be. I was just curious. I know that that's at least in my experience, that's not associated with the shakuhachi world. Just not a shakuhachi players, not a hard partying group of people.
Yeah, like everybody's in bed by 9.
It's a festival, one beer, everyone's in bed by 9. People are up at 6 doing qigong in the park. It's not a party hard kind of group of people.
So he's talking about our festivals, the ones that I run. Gosh, how wholesome, and I guess they could really say I am a good Christian boy, huh?
Yeah, it's very wholesome. It's very straightforward, and it's after 2 days, 3 days hanging out with this people. You feel bad when you use the word darn.
So at our first festival, it was kind of like that. Nick and I were up at 6 a.m. and then we got to the place around 7.
Yeah.
And then we got started right away, and we worked all the way till 5, had dinner together, and by the time it was 7 o'clock, everybody's like, I think I'm just going to go to my room and practice for an hour and then go to bed.
Yeah, everybody was pretty tired.
And then same thing at Hirosaki, it was the same sort of situation.
Yes.
So.
And at Hirosaki, we were playing, we had this beautiful park kind of right in front of where we were staying.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would just go to the park and play until it got too cold.
Yeah.
And but there was one night where the Russians got kind of torn up, but
yeah,
but that's their culture.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a hard drinking group of people.
I absolutely loved when we were like, it's like, he's like, yes, you guys should definitely come to Russia and have great time with us. I have a brother. His name is Boris. He's a good taxi driver. Owns own company.
Yes,
of course you do.
Of course you do. Yeah, I mean, I've never met a Russian who didn't have a cousin or something who could help you out. So, but yeah, it's not a group of people that sort of leans on chemical help.
No, not
to
at
get
all.
On stage,
not at all.
And if one more person recommends a cup of tea to me, I'm gonna go on like a 3-state killing spree. Okay, because I'm sorry. It's nasty. Okay?
You just need a Coke Zero. That will help you.
I do. That's what I do before any kind of performance is Coke Zero.
No, welcome in Arthur Plus.
I have a well-known amongst our group. I have a well-documented problem with tea.
Yeah.
So
And
it tastes like what it is. Wet leaves.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Okay. So let's go ahead and get to a couple questions here. We got some interesting comments. So Jeff asked, what's the proper way to learn kan? And well, first part is very carefully. Second part is that it comes from the embouchure. So I've mentioned this many times on on live streams and on a bunch of different videos, but it's important to remember this phrase: volume versus velocity. This is just the key of playing shakuhachi in balancing out your tone color, your sound, your range, all of these sort of things. So volume is the amount of air coming out, and velocity is the type of air, the speed of the air coming out. So there's a couple ways that kan can be achieved. The first way is that you just overblow, right? You push a lot of the volume of air out. The second way, which I believe is the proper way of doing it, is by the velocity, which is where you tighten the embouchure, speeding up the airflow, and that shoots the note into the next partial. So if you're playing Rho, you speed up the air, and it jumps to the next partial. Speed up the air again, you jump to the next partial, and you jump to the next partial. I jumped 2, but you get the point. You can keep jumping up those partials by speeding up the airflow, and I'm not changing the volume, the amount of air that I'm using.
And volume, not loudness, but yeah, volume
the
in the
size,
physics
like right,
sense.
like how many milliliters of air is coming out per second.
So I say to my students, I call it the kiss your grandma method, where you're playing in otsu and then you just ever so slightly pucker your lips. Push your lips forward like you're about to kiss your grandma on the cheek. You will jump to kan, usually.
That'll do it.
You can also, what about a lot of people want to crack the back hole open?
Yeah, this is a nice little trick, and sometimes it's very nice for certain pieces where you want to jump up quickly. Like I can think of the piece Gekko Roll Teki by Fukurando. It's a great piece to have that. you get that little pop in the back there. That can really help with that sort of feeling of articulation going into kan. But if you are struggling getting up there, you can just simply crack open that back hole, and then it will pop right up. And then if it does this, like if you go, you know that the issue is that your embouchure is too loose, and so you have to tighten that up a little bit more.
Yep. And, getting into the con register, again, can be an issue with your flute. Some flutes are really friendly to the con register. I have flutes that are that are happier in con than in otsu. And so there's some knowing your flute to get there, too. As you get to know your instrument, you'll find that certain things will, like I have a flute that plays really, really nicely in the daikon register, but not all of them do, and so you have to know your instrument a little bit too. Yeah,
and some instruments are a little bit more finicky, and I might be oversimplifying it by just saying it's the mouth position. You have to in some cases lift the flute up a little bit to play in kan, because you want that you want the embouchure to be closer to the utaguchi as well.
There's a time. I mean, plus, you also need to listen, because once you get to where you can hit con notes regularly, then you're going to discover whether those notes are kind of sharp or kind of flat, and that's something else that you'll have to adjust with angle of your embouchure. But just getting it to pop up, I think what he's described, just tightening the embouchure is sort of the key. It's the foundational step. After that, it's all polish.
Right? All right, so we've got some more statements here. Let's see here. Arthur Plus says, do smaller shakuhachi style flutes have limitations compared to the traditional shakuhachis? Is the study the same? So I don't know if he's meaning necessarily just shorter flutes, like a 1.6 or 1.5.
Or thinner bores.
Yeah, that could also be the case too, like thinner bores and things like that. So for shorter flutes, let's say if you're working like a 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, all of the techniques are the same, right? Like everything is the same. You just have to blow with a faster airspeed overall, and of course the timbre will be different. I think where it really starts to become almost like a different instrument is like around 1.3, because the timbre starts to become closer to like a shinobue.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything else on there is the same, and we can still. There's a lot of pieces we can play with those shorter flutes, and there are a lot of older flutes that are shorter, like a 1.3, 1.4. So it's not like they don't exist, and Honkyoku was never played on them.
I play Honkyoku and also Fukudarando on my 1.4, 1.5, and I think the biggest difficulty is that, I mean, this is going to sound silly, but everything is smaller, including all your head movements. And so like your yuri will be smaller, and every naiashi or whatever you try to do will be smaller. And I find that trying to do muraiki on the small flutes is also correspondingly smaller.
Yeah.
And so that takes some, again, getting to know your instrument. You gotta know your small flutes pretty well, or you can overblow them quite easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I am a big proponent of small flute, so I'm not in the quest to play a 3.9 like everyone else. So I'm not interested. I want a 0.9.
Your mom must have told you were very special when you were young.
She did.
Okay, I thought so.
I want a 0.9. Have you seen that picture of the 0.9?
Yeah.
I want a 0.9.
Why don't you just play Hito Yogiri? That is the same.
It's not. It's not the same. I tried to play Hito Yogiri for about 5 minutes and was like, nope, don't want to. So... it's a Hito Yogiri, I think, is one of those. I think it falls into for me, it's like bagpipes. I think it's so cool that someone is doing it. I just don't want to be that person. Like, I think it's so cool that someone's keeping that historical instrument alive or bringing it back to life. But it is. I don't want to be that person. I'm to be honest, I find the main shakuhachi repertoire that I am working on right now plenty challenging enough. I do not have time for another instrument.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and I think some people also do feel that way, but you'd really get there's so much. I think the biggest value for it for me, doing all the research and working alongside Nick with this, is just the sheer amount of historical stuff that we get. And as a history nerd, and just loving to read those traditional and old school documents.
I've seen you and Nick together. It's a huge bromance as well.
Yeah,
You guys...
yeah, it's just true. That is very true. We're inseparable.
Yeah, no, I mean you guys have a lot in common and also similar interests. And plus Nick is just he's a font of information as well. So, but yeah, I think it's really I totally applaud the project. I just honestly don't have time to be part of it. So I think that he was talking whole number, not length.
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure what that means. Like,
1 and 2 are always difficult. So if you're counting the way we do from the bottom.
Yeah, so if you're saying like this note are difficult, is that what he's saying? Like,
I feel like it must be 4 and 5 that he's talking about.
So he's like talking about he and she and he, like, playing in the upper octave. Well, he says yes. Like, so he says he can get these notes, but he can't get those notes up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, again, tightening the embouchure. So there's a couple ways that you can practice getting those two notes in con. So Jeff's question, to simplify it, is that, when he gets into con, ro, and su, that's totally fine. But then once we get re, chi, he, e, the notes start to drop out. So there are a couple exercises that I give to my students. So the first one is a common one that Western flute players do, which is just like I call it the trampoline exercise. You start in the lower register, and so on and so forth, and just going up the notes by that, just doing octave jumps. The next one that I give to my students that I find to be really helpful is just kind of like walking up and down the stairs. And so on and so forth, like that, because you can slowly tighten the embouchure each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I missed it. Gotta hit the button. There we go. Gotta keep it hit. So your shakuhachi is also double as a stick.
back scratcher.
Back scratcher.
Really, if you've got a really sharp root ball on the end, great back scratcher.
Yeah, that's the number one, man.
So
you would never see that with any other instrument, like someone with their oboe, like get it on over there. But shakuhachi's totally different in that sense.
Yeah, well, strong bamboo.
Strong bamboo.
That's right. It actually, SYD is one of my students. He's speaking of flute. He says my 1.6 carbon fiber will be arriving this week. That's the
I think he means fiberglass too.
I think you do, but it's Daisuke Kamanaga from Wagaki Band. Mm-hmm. And it should be in modern tuning. I don't think it's not going to be in Tawadi, that I'm sure, because he's a Tozan player. Anyway, yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that flute sounds. I haven't really heard much out of it. I've heard him playing it, and he sounds great, but I haven't heard anyone else. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes. It's that's a kind of a untested field. When you see flutes made of alternative materials, they are almost entirely 1.8s. And so 1.6 in a different material is interesting. And good for this particular person, because he definitely needs a flute with a more straight tuning.
Yeah.
All right. I think we are caught up, I think, on questions in comments.
Yes, and so always feel free to ask your comments in the or questions in the comments area. Totally happy to answer those.
So I have another topic for you, and this is something
ready.
that recently came up in my life. You're asked to play shakuhachi for a completely uninitiated audience. They don't don't know anything about shakuhachi. They're not weebs. They're not gamers. They don't know anything about Japan. They don't speak Japanese. What repertoire do you play for them? I'll tell you what I played, but you can tell me.
So it's always trying to find something that's familiar first, so that way you don't want to give so much new information at once, where then the people are like, well, that's different, so like if you walk out there and play Honshirabe, that's going to be a well, that was different.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That kind of thing is, so you don't want that. Right. So a lot of times you can get away with even just starting with Sakura.
Sakura?
Yeah, because it's a piece that a lot of people even learn in their childhood, and like when they any world music class, even in like high schools and stuff, when you learn music, they're like, yeah, this is a Japanese song called Sakura. It's actually really hard to find people who haven't been exposed to like nothing of Japan.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can always like rely on some sort of imagery and then play Sakura, and then it's like, yeah, that really sounds like Japan, because it is the Miyakobushi scale,
Right.
and it has that, like, this does that that kind of sound there is just so enigmatic of Japan. So that's what I would start out with, is probably Sakura, in addition to like some sort of storytelling to help set the mind for Japan. Another thing too that I say to a lot of people is, I say like if you've ever watched movies, and sometimes before like a samurai fight scene or like an old Japanese scene, you might like hear the sound of shakuhachi, and you can start with just playing, or like a, and like those sort of sounds will be like, oh yeah, that's where I know that thing from.
Right.
And then you can say, okay, now I'm going to play Sakura. Okay, now I'm going to play you one of the old traditional pieces, then Honshirabe. And that should really help initiate the audience. So they're like, I'm on board with you. Now I get it.
Right.
You know, it has like these sort of like qualities to it that are very atmospheric.
Well, so my daughter just had her birthday party. Our friends from Sri Lanka came to the house. And they were like, well, would you play for us? And I said, sure. And I went and got my flute. And what do you think I played?
Let's see. The Sri Lanka national anthem?
No. No, I wish I had.
Sodan Bushi?
No.
What'd you play?
I played Tsuki.
Tsuki. Okay.
And then I wanted to do the Star Wars medley, but I restrained myself.
Yeah, that's good. That's probably best. Probably best.
It's, you know what? The actual name of the piece is the Twin Moons of Tatooine or something like that, but it's often referred to as the Force theme. Fits perfectly on shakuhachi. Don't let the big dragon tell you otherwise.
It's wrong.
Says the guy who covered Britney Spears.
That was right in all the ways. Leave her alone.
Leave Britney alone. All right. All right.
Oh,
so
boy.
We should probably do some button pushing. You know, we should remind people
Oh,
to do
yes.
all that.
Hit the buttons. So we got the like button, you got the subscribe button, and then we also have the memberships. So if you're interested in winning a Yozan shakuhachi in the future, join our membership. We give away shakuhachis all the time, and well, recently,
usually once a month, but
yeah, unsuccessfully recently, because people didn't actually pick them up. But now we have two of the people who are actually in the chat today to pick them up.
That's
so
great.
Congratulations again, David and Brian. If you want to be like David and Brian, then you have to sign up for the membership. So
be like David and Brian.
Yeah, be like David and Brian and join the membership. David and Brian also can never win again, too. So
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
once
true.
you've won, you're out. So also with the past winners who didn't pick up, too. They've won. They've already won. You can't pick it up.
Boy,
So
that's rough.
It is rough, but, you know, it's not all heroes wear capes.
That's right. Well, you know, the rules of shakuhachi. We don't make the rules. We
Yeah.
just abide by them.
That's right. And sometimes enforce them.
Well, and I think that the pushing the button thing is something we should mention. We're at 43,000.
43,300 something odd subscribers, which is great.
Yeah, and you know, like to see 50K at some point. Would you do something special for 50K?
I have no idea what I'm going to do for 50K. Like, there's been ideas that have thrown out, but you know, really the really big one is 100K.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at what point do you get one of the buttons from YouTube?
100K.
100K is the silver button?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 1 million is the gold. And then 10 million is the diamond.
Are there 1 million people on Earth that even play shakuhachi?
Probably not.
Probably not. I don't think if you... That's the thing. If you have a guitar channel and you get 1 million subscribers, big deal.
Yeah.
Right? There's 1 million guitars moldering in closets right now, you know. But 1 million, man, even 100,000. If you get 100,000 subscribers on a shakuhachi channel, that would be quite an accomplishment. I think.
Especially like not one that's just covering anime music or something, but actually like educational shakuhachi channel.
Right. That would be really tough. And
Yeah.
I think that the problem with that, though, is that, like, you know, how many of those people are actually engaged with the channel, or just were like, yeah, I'll give this a...
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot too, especially like, you know, even with our live streams, we don't usually break 20 concurrent viewers at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's not like terrible. Again, we're teaching shakuhachi live on YouTube. You'll have like 100,000 people watching our live stream, like it's the debate elections or something.
Right. People aren't clamoring to get in the front row.
No.
Of shakuhachi instruction, which is unfortunate because.
Yeah. But maybe sometime in the future. But video content has been receiving more views in general. Even performances of like contemporary classical music and classical tunes and so on and so forth. But the way I view the YouTube in general is not to have videos that are like have a bunch of views right away and then kind of die away. Rather, I view all of the videos as resources and educational material that people will come back to and watch again and again. So it's for a smaller audience of people who are really interested in learning the instrument. So
well, it's kind of an important documentation thing as well. Just that because a lot of these pieces in the repertoire are not things that you can readily find a copy of.
Well, here's what I found to be really interesting. So somebody emailed me actually on Facebook with a bunch of questions, and they said, how do I do this? And I said, I have a video on this. And I sent them a video, and then they asked me another question. And I said, I have a video on this actually, and then I sent them, and I ended up sending 6 videos that answered all of their questions about it. And I told the person, you do know there's 1,000 videos on my channel, right? Actually 1,000 videos.
Like you could search those instead of sending me an email.
Yeah, he's like, what? It's no, it's almost everything, everything on here that we've been doing, all the questions you've asked, I've already done a video on because it's the most common questions that I get.
Yeah.
And then after that, you get to more specific questions that we can address in the live stream, or that that you guys would sign up for lessons with people like you or my associate masters, and then get that going.
So you can ask questions that make Taidu really rethink his life choices. I asked him the other day why my flute sounds better 20 cents flat.
What was my response to that?
You were like, you like Mehdi? I don't know, you dumbass. And he walked out of the room.
No, I remember now. I remember exactly how the conversation went. So I'm going to clear the record really quickly. So
I just felt like a dumbass.
So Linus says to me, he's like, man, sometimes I have students who just ask me just the stupidest questions, and I go, yeah, I have students who ask me why I sound better when I'm 20 cents flat, and I walked out of the room.
Okay, so I went through a period of playing flat. Okay, I was not using a tuner, I was not using drones. I was my bad, and I got to the point where I got accustomed to hearing my flute about 20 cents flat. And I started in my head that was Ro, not Ro Mehdi, and I then had Sean was in a lesson, he was like, yeah, all of this sounds really good, it's just you're 20 cents flat through the whole piece. And I was like, what? And I went and checked, and yes, it was. And then I spent 2 months just agonizing over it, trying to get back up to where I was at the right pitch. And so when when I'm being lazy, if I'm not in good body posture, not sitting up straight or whatever, if I'm laying on the couch and I pick up my shakuhachi, I'm 20 cents flat. And sometimes I feel I don't know, man, that's pretty nice. It's pretty warm and fuzzy. And
yeah. Well, look, I mean, in a lot of there's no back in the old days of playing shakuhachi, there was no standardized way of making a shakuhachi nor a standardized way of playing. That's why you had all these different schools, and there were schools where if you picked up one of their flutes, you were playing up here the entire time.
Yeah. And
it was always in a Mehdi position. Otherwise, the flute just wouldn't sound in tune.
Yeah.
Or just couldn't play. So, but today it's a little bit different because of our
standardization.
Yes.
A equals 440. Well, and you mentioned, if you have these kind of questions, you mentioned being able to find some other instructors that could help out. Taidu's schedule is pretty much packed at this point.
Yeah.
But if you go to our community tab, you will notice that there are flyers for a number of teachers.
Yep.
A good friend of mine, Svenja, who teaches in English, German, and Spanish, whichever is your preference. If you scroll down a little bit further, there's Kevin. By the way, what does his bamboo name mean? Ryudechi?
I have to look at the character again.
I think...
Hold on, I have to pull it up.
I don't know if he has it. Oh, it's down there on the right, lower right.
Oh, it's an old character. I'll pull up its meaning again.
Yeah, because, Kevin can teach in English or in Mandarin. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see Mike Hinkediker, who can teach in Spanish and English. And then a little below that brings you to Hao Yu, who can teach in English and Mandarin. So there's quite a few options there, and we're very, very happy to have so many international members of our studio. The really fascinating one is Svenja. Svenja is from Germany, but has lived in a number of different countries and is quite capable in English. Her English is very, very good. And she now lives in a country where she speaks Spanish all the time, so her Spanish is quite good also. So yeah, really amazing resources for those for whom English isn't their first language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have other students who are working their way up to that Chuden Shihan level. They still have a year or two to go before they're there. Could be even a little bit longer than that. But they are also we're looking into adding like Russian to our languages and so on and stuff like that. So lots of new and exciting things coming up for the Taidu studio.
Yeah, I think it's really, I don't know, it's very good to scroll through and see all of these people. My flyer is not there because I have a face made for radio.
And you haven't made it yet because you're lazy.
No, the flyer is laid out. I'm just trying to get a photograph where I don't look like, take flute from the Sons of Anarchy. Like if I could.
you should just make it like the most awkward face ever. Like you kind of like a side eye, like a that sort of thing. Like that's the whole entire picture.
No, I have resting bitch face really severely, and it's very difficult for me to convey my personality in a photograph.
Kevin's name, it has a couple meaning. Basically, it has the meaning of like clarity or becoming complete, thoroughly and completely.
Wow.
So, I think it's like it could have like a lot of like deep metaphysical meaning. So we won't get into it too much, but.
So SYD commented that he thinks, and I know he doesn't live in the United States, but he thinks that the popularity of shakuhachi is very low compared to shamisen or koto or taiko. Mm-hmm. Or like he mentioned shinobue, and in my experience, I don't think anybody. I don't know anybody in the United States who plays shinobue.
Well, usually shinobue is people pick it up because they're doing taiko.
Taiko, yeah.
Right. So It's a secondary thing afterwards. I definitely would say that taiko is bigger.
I would say shamisen is bigger. At least the Tsugaru surf shamisen.
Tsugaru,
surf rock.
Surf rock shamisen is definitely bigger than shakuhachi.
Yeah.
But I don't think nagauta is.
Yeah.
I would say that probably outside Japan, maybe koto is about the same as shakuhachi.
You don't see it's. I think it's not that uncommon to walk into, for example, a karate studio in the United States and see a shakuhachi on a shelf, but you don't walk in and find a koto in the back room. It's not been my experience. But and popularizing the shakuhachi. Someone last week said they would like to see the shakuhachi take that lead solo instrument feel like saxophone. Mm-hmm. They would love to hear more shakuhachi in music, and that sort of modern application of shakuhachi is something that is definitely not like my strong suit. But you've played a lot of modern music or a lot.
Yeah, I played Britney Spears.
I was okay. We're not talking about the same thing, thank God. No, I'm talking about
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Contemporary classical music.
Yeah, and well, this is one of the videos I posted recently was a video called Mirror of the Cosmos, and this is actually a commissioned piece for shakuhachi and orchestra, which I'm having Daniel Asia write, who is a very prolific American composer. And that's what I want to do with a lot more people. In addition to this, is I'm also working with a brilliant composer from the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance. Her name's Talia Amar, and she's writing me a piece for shakuhachi and electronics. And I've been working on it. Like, I have it up on my iPad. It is an awesome piece. Like, she really gets the instrument, and she's done a lot of research. And I'm super excited to premiere her piece in the future. I'm still waiting for the recordings from her 4 students. I have 2 out of 4 of them. I need 2 more of them, and then I can finally make the video premiering all of them and sharing that stuff. But I mean, I love that kind of world of the new music and what can be done for the shakuhachi, and yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, it's not all Backstreet Boys covers.
No, it's not. It could be, but
mean,
it's not.
We're not saying that shouldn't happen.
As long as it's not in sync, we're fine.
In sync. Ugh. All right. Bitmask64 asks, in Japan, isn't the frequency 442?
Yeah, they tune sharp here. I've seen some people even tune up all the way to 444.
Why?
Well, there's for the strings that's tighter and clearer.
Sure.
And it's happening like that in Europe too, and America's also following suit for just orchestral tuning practices. I think it's stupid. I like 440. I think 440 is a beautiful balance between clarity of the string sound and the overall harmonics. And the string players can fight me on it. I'm sure that one of my best friends would fight me on the tuning of this. I think he tunes to 442, but I'm all for about 440.
There's when the A equals 440 standard first came around, there were a lot of people in the classical world who argued against it based on the idea that they wanted to tune off of where the first violin sounded best. Right, and have the first violinist tune up, and everybody tunes to him, and whatever it is what it is that day. And there's a lot of precedent for that too in popular music. The Beatles, when Yesterday first came out, everybody was like, "God, it's so hard. It's in B flat. Why?" It isn't. They were just detuned.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of precedent for playing in other tunings. The 440 thing. I think the reason that it's so impactful in the West is that we're all looking at keyboards. We're all looking at pianos to get our reference notes.
Yeah, well, that happened in the early 1900s. The guy who did that, by the way, was actually Debussy's pianist, a piano tuner. He was one of the only people in New York who could tune a piano to the way that Debussy liked it, which was pure equal temperament, because he liked the shimmery sound of like stacked fifths. So that's really where I think one of the revolutionary tuning systems came about. Violin, violoncello, and bass can all do alternate tunings as well. That's called in string world we call that scordatura, which is basically just a fancy way, a Latin way of saying you turn your peg away to make the one note a little bit lower. So
it's drop D for violin, right?
Yeah. But there are pieces like that we use alternate tunings to get those effects.
Yeah, when you, and it's funny, in the guitar or ukulele world, when you say alternate tuning, everyone thinks slack key. And because that's like an alternate tuning where you actually have to think about your fingerings, that's hard. An alternate tuning where you're just going to put a slide on your third finger.
Yeah, I think it's the Kodai Sonata for cello where there's a scordatura thing, and you have to actually be really aware, because on string instruments we can play the same note in many different ways depending on where it is in the register, and then if it's a scordatura tuning, though, that string no longer functions like it used to. So when you're reading a score, sometimes you're reading the note but it's actually sounding a whole step down because it's the only string that's tuned differently than anything else. I can't remember the name of the piece, of course, but there's one where the top violin string is tuned down from an E to a D. It's a really famous piece, and you hear it a lot in film scores and commercials and stuff like that. And that's one of those pieces.
Interesting.
Another one that's tuned in a tritone as well, where it's D sharp instead of an E. That one's even more famous, and that one you hear in commercials all the time.
Wow. Well, SYD says that the lowest thing in popularity is the biwa.
Yeah.
I would have to agree.
Or like the hitoyogiri.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as biwa goes, I mean, I've been living in Japan for going on 3 years now, and I have yet to hear a biwa in any way.
I'm in the Hogaku world, and I go to concerts, and I meet players all the time. I have not met one biwa player yet.
But it's not... I mean, there are biwa players in Gagaku, and that's not...
Yeah, but that's... I mean... if
I mean,
we
I
think,
see them.
yeah, but Gagaku's different in the sense that when you learn Gagaku, you don't just learn one instrument; you learn all of them. That was the traditional way of doing it. So
Yikes.
when you go to like Tokyo Geidai and you say, "I'm going to learn Gagaku," you learn every instrument of Gagaku and you can play every part. You may specialize, right, into being one area, but Gagaku players in general can play every single instrument.
Yeah, no, Hichiriki. That's the way to go.
And be careful, LeBron might be here. That's his instrument, man.
I know that instrument kicks ass. It's so cool. It's one of those instruments. It's like oboe in that when someone's really good on it, it's magic. Mm-hmm. But the first 10 years that they play it, that magic isn't there yet. It's
fair
really
enough.
rough.
That's fair enough.
Really rough. All right. Well, let's take a look here at the again at the community tab. There's a couple quotes here that I kind of wanted your take on.
Let's do one quote and then we'll have to do some closing stuff.
Okay. So let's do Coleman Hawkins.
Okay.
If you don't make mistakes, you aren't really trying.
I'm glad you did that one actually, because I know we read over a couple of them before we started, and there was the
Dizzy Gillespie quote.
No, but I will talk about a trumpet player. When I was a student in Milwaukee at the Milwaukee Youth Symphony Orchestra, the principal trumpet at that time, and it might still be the same guy, he came in and he was giving us a talk about practice, and he says he doesn't practice at home, and he actually uses one of the old Catholic church buildings downtown. And he leaves all of his stuff there, and so it's a nunnery as well. So the nuns live there full time and stuff like that. And he says that I've been practicing there for 10 years, and the nuns still don't believe I actually play for the symphony. And he says, because he's just like, I sound so bad when I practice, like, because I don't practice things that I'm good at. I practice the things that I'm not good at and I can't do. So it's really a rough session. And that's what that quote really drives me to think of, is that story of him is like, look, when you're playing, like, it should sound, like, when you're practicing the practice, it should sound bad. If it's sounding good, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah, you're not. I mean, there's a fine line between practicing and kind of just like practice and rehearsal. Right?
Yeah, and noodling around and
noodling,
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm notoriously bad for just noodling and not getting anything done.
Yeah, well, I think we all are.
I like the sound of the instrument, and sometimes I would rather sound good than sound bad while I'm learning something.
Yeah.
Well, Coleman Hawkins, for those of you who are not familiar, I'm not talking about the K-State guard. I'm talking about the jazz sax player. Yeah. If you listen to Coleman Hawkins play, you can understand why he might say that, because he was a very kind of adventurous player. He'd go off and try things that other people might not try, in that John Coltrane kind of feeling, same sort of vibe. But when you make a mistake, we talked a little bit about this beforehand, when you make a mistake in performance, even if it's not like in front of an audience, just playing for your teacher, or playing in the park or whatever, a lot of us have a tendency to go, oh, that's not, sorry, let me back up.
Yeah.
And that, we've discussed in the past, is not helpful.
Yeah. Sorry is not in the score, so don't say it. Is not in the score either. Yeah. And then I had one student once where great violin student. She's now a professional violinist, and she was playing for me, and she goes, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to the music." She looks over to the stand and goes, "I'm sorry."
See, now that makes me want to write a piece that has like "well shit" written into it.
They have Peter Schickli wrote pieces like that, and he recently passed away. Really, really great composer and kind of like classical music comedian. So if you don't know who that is, you should definitely look up Peter Schickli. He also wrote a book, which is, the name of it is escaping me, which it has all of like the major symphony melodies, and then he put words to them. So it's like, for example, the Tchaikovsky's Fifth. There's a really beautiful section there, and these aren't his words. These are actually words that were taught to me by another teacher. But the melody goes da 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 dee dum da da dee da dee da 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 dum da 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 dum. Very famous.
Oh, he's the PDQ Bach guy.
Yes, PDQ Bach. That's right.
Okay.
So the lyrics that go over that one, from what I was told, was, "Once I was a virgin, now I am a whore. Once I wanted nothing, and now all I want is more." So yeah, you can have a lot of fun. And when I used to do a lot more stuff with like Western classical music, people would like ask me about a piece or something, and then I'd be able to sing like the main melodies of it. Like, how do you know so much music, and how are you able to remember so much stuff? And it's like, well, let me tell you about my friend PDQ Bach. And this is a lot of this stuff I have memorized because of melodies like that. For example, if you ask somebody to sing the opening of the Eroica Symphony from Beethoven, it's the bum 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 da dum. Right, the way you know that is, "Oh my God, it's Beethoven's third again." So you get a bunch of these sort of things where you can get the lyrics. And one of my favorite ones to end it off is, "This is Schubert's symphony, the symphony he did not finish. Oh, too bad, no one cares." So you can get a bunch of the melodies and memorize them by adding those lyrics to them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is the book you're talking about, but the PDQ Bach book that I just posted in the chat there is the complete biographies of PDQ Bach. If you're not familiar with PDQ Bach, like, I grew up playing in like high school band and junior high band, and we always played PDQ Bach pieces. Really funny stuff. Things where, like, for example, the trumpet players are instructed to remove their mouthpieces from the instrument and cup their hand around the instrument and just kind of go around the mouthpiece and just go like that. Was actually written in the score.
Yeah.
Or I was a percussionist, and we had one of the pieces had a cymbal crash, but it was written El Crasho Grosso. And the way we did it was we piled all the toys, the triangles and the small cymbals and everything, on a table. And we had a metal box on the floor, and when that part came, we just tipped the table over, which was basically what he wanted in the score. Really fun stuff. If you think classical music is dry and boring, you should check out some PDQ Bach. It's quite hilarious.
Or like Victor Borge.
Victor Borge,
yeah,
and,
absolute genius.
An important thing about that comedic music, in order for the comedy to work, the music has to be super solid.
Yeah, they have to. It's actually, I found a lot of like Victor Borge's like playing. It was like more superb than the average professional pianist.
He was amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it's just a little sight gag, but like I love he walks up, flips his tails out, sits down, gets the chair adjusted and everything, and then he takes a look at the music and he does that I'm nearsighted kind of thing, and then he starts playing, and it kind of sounds familiar, and you're like, what? And then he takes like, I don't know, 8 bars and then stops and goes, oh, and he turns the music over and sets it down and starts playing, and you realize that he was playing the William Tell Overture, but like backwards.
Backwards and inverted. Yeah, we call that retrograde inversion.
Yeah, just really clever stuff, and it's not easy to do, and to make it work, you really have to be solid. And I think the same is true with Shakuhachi. I play Mushizuki a lot for children, and to sell the fact that it's frogs and bugs and whatever, you tell them beforehand so they're listening for it, but you really have to, like, those sounds have to be there. Yeah, you have to really nail it for it to be funny.
Absolutely. And it actually reminds me, Victor Borge's playing the music upside down. That actually came, I think, from one of Beethoven's music competitions that he did. So back in the day, people used to, the bigwigs entertain themselves by going to piano offs. They would have improvisation battles, and Beethoven was going against David Steinbelt or something like that. Of course, you remember Beethoven, you don't remember the other guy. But when this David went up first and played, and it was like beautiful 2-hour improvisation. It was just incredible. And Beethoven goes up, takes the page, flips it upside down, and plays his own material better than him, and just goes for the rest of the night just playing nonstop. And David leaves. He just leaves. And what's really interesting about that particular event is that there is people's diary entries about going to that event and just saying like it was the most heart-wrenching thing that they've ever heard in their life. And There are many accounts people said that Beethoven's improvisation outdoes his compositions by far.
Wow.
So it makes you really wonder, like, man, what was that like?
What was going on in his head that didn't make it to the paper?
Probably those 60 beans of coffee, or 60 beans per a cup of coffee that he was drinking, along with all the absinthe. Probably that. But
and look, we come full circle to drinking before performing.
That's right. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this wonderful episode of Shakuhachi, and
please go forth and manifest.
Please go forth and manifest on this magical 22nd live stream.
22nd live stream. It's very important that you follow the divine blueprint today.
That's right. All right, have a good one, guys. See you next time.
Row for 10.